For today's activity, I would actually like to try Scratch. This may be familiar with some of you. You may have done this in elementary school. You may have done this in middle school. You may think it's for babies, but I can assure you it is definitely not. They teach this as a first year programming in colleges. They teach Scratch for programming for a lot of people. So if you think that you're way above this, you want to program in a different language, you're more than welcome to. But if you do not have a Scratch account, here's how you go about it. You choose a username. You put in a password. I will share all of my information. Please don't hack and mess around in my account, but you can see that you'll need a password, you'll need a username, you'll need to reveal your country of origin, also the, also your age. I'll reveal my age. You'll see I was born in March 1976. You may already have a Scratch account, and that's great. You may feel more comfortable using a different programming environment. If you have something more sophisticated than Scratch that you can work with, that's great. But I will assure you that Berkeley, MIT, I'm not sure about MIT, but Berkeley does teach Scratch in their first year computer programming. University of California, Berkeley. This is a college class. It's one of the best computer science programs in the entire world. They teach Scratch. You want to look up some really cool, sophisticated games? There are lots of them. Event Horizon is one that comes to mind. That was not built by kids. That was built by computer science students in college. Now, what I'm going to have you do, get rid of all the tutorials if you're not familiar with that. I'll skip ahead a little bit. We get rid of the cat. You can delete the cat. There's a little box where you can delete the cat. We're going to make the beginning of an ant, plant, spider system. You may have seen these videos. The ant we're talking about, its scientific name is Pseudomyrmex pepperii. I have a personal connection to this. This is what I studied to get my master's degree in biology. So I would like to kind of share my experience because it's a pretty fascinating system. If we're talking about a habitat, we're building up to talk about an ecosystem. The habitat where these ants and plants live, there's a Pseudomyrmex pepperii eating a Beltian body, which we'll talk about later. But right now, let's get the ant drawn. What I was saying is that the ecosystem is extremely small. If some of you remember at Riverside, there was discussion about how to understand ecosystems using Antarctica as an example. The food chain in Antarctica is very simple. The same thing is true with this ant plant system. What I'm going to do here is draw the ant. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it is an insect, so it has 3 body parts. People who learned about insects in elementary school might recall that. A head, a thorax, and abdomen. Ants are insects. There's my head. I'll also add an eye. Although these ants, I will say, these ants have very poor eyesight. If you ever need to undo something, you can go and undo it. These ants have very poor eyesight. They primarily navigate by smell, which they smell with their antennae, which is the next thing I'll draw once I get the eye in. But if you remember the picture that I showed of Pseudomyrmex pepperii, it does appear to have a large eye, even though that eye is really not functional. The antennae, which I'm drawing here, are what are actually the sensory organs that allow the ant to get around. As it's an insect, I'll make sure it has 6 legs, 3 on each side. They all come from the thorax. A little bit of anatomy here. That's what ants have. And in addition to that, they have mouth parts. As I may have mentioned before, these ants are biting ants. They are stinging ants. So I will want to have some mouth parts that will bite in case it does find the spider, this is the only thing we're going to set up for today. It's a fairly simple, it's just going to be a lot of drawing. Maybe some people want to make it a lot prettier than mine is. That's certainly welcome. Just excuse me, just make it look like an ant, please. This part I'll actually speed up so you don't have to see every last little detail. But what I'm doing here, I'm putting in my math parts. I have my insect. Now I'm going to start making copies of this insect. I just have to remember how to do that. There we go. I'm going to try to copy using the copy button, using the arrow. I'm first rearranging the legs here, because if I rearrange the legs, I can make this ant look like it's walking a little bit. You'll see that when I start animating the ant. There you go. So now I switch back and forth. It almost does look like an ant is walking. This will take you a little bit of time. Take your time with it. I'm just trying to make this video reasonably short. The other thing I'm doing is I'm having this ant twist its abdomen around so that it looks like it's going to try to sting the spider. I put it in a couple of different steps so it looks like a fairly smooth transition. If you just want to have one image one costume where the ant has its legs in one position, one where it has its legs in another position, and then one costume where it has the stinger, which I'm going to make the stinger a slightly different color. Now I can actually make it look like the ant is stinging. That's going to be important later on, the color of that stinger. If you just have 3 costumes instead of the 7 that I put in, that's acceptable. But it doesn't look exactly like my picture. But now we're also going to move to the spider. I'll show you another way that you could possibly save some time by making a spider. You could do this for the ant as well. I just thought it would be nice to animate the ant. I looked through my spider pictures. Some of these are Bagheera Kiplingi, some of these actually aren't. That's the name of the spider, the one that I studied when I was getting my master's degree, when I was in graduate school. I studied this particular spider. That's an example of one of them. This spider, if you remember those they called them leaf pods in the video with the ants harvesting the food off of the plants, and the ants get everything they need off the plants. This spider harvests those pods. They're called Beltian bodies in the scientific term for them is Beltian bodies. Let me find the best picture, though. I guess I'll just go with, well, that one's he's eating. That's probably the best one. That's a female Bagheera Kiplingi. Now what I'm going to do, I'll take a screenshot. That's going to make it the easiest for me. Now I go back to Scratch. When I have this particular thing, I can go to upload a sprite, and then I have my screenshot. And what I will want to do is, I don't want the whole background around with the spider, so I'll zoom in. I'll use my eraser tool, and I can start removing the background. If you see that once I put the eraser across it, it takes away that background. And what I have on the right-hand side is actually my stage. That's where the sprites are going to interact with each other. I think I should, well, you can have the freedom to choose the one. I just want you to have an idea of removing the background for a picture also. I'm hoping we can work towards a final project. Maybe it would be a computer animation. Maybe it would be a computer simulation. It could be a video. It could be something else. But I do want some sort of technology. That's the way the world's going. Since we are at home for the moment, this is a great time to get to use some technology. I'll speed this up. I didn't actually need to go through every last little detail of how I remove the background. But you can see fairly quickly that I can get rid of the background. It doesn't have to be perfect. Making different sizes with the erasers. I'm going to remove that food pod because this spider is actually going to be searching for food. So here I have my Bagheera and I have my ant. Let me get to coding now. So I have my ant and I have my spider. And I'm going to start entering in code. If you do Python, code's a little bit more typing, Scratch is a lot more drag and drop, which is why a lot of very highly rated and highly regarded computer science programs actually use Scratch, because it allows you to do a lot of the important programming concepts without having to worry so much about getting the spelling exactly right, because you could mess up your entire 1,000 lines of coding with one misspelling. This doesn't, this lets you avoid that. So what I want to do, first I want to try to animate my ant so that it looks like it's walking. My very first costume was called Ant. It was the ant with its legs in a certain position. My second costume, which is called Costume 1, is the ant with the legs in slightly different position. And you'll see once I start to animate this, because between Ant and Costume 1, those are two costumes. Now you can see that it actually gives the impression that the ant is walking. Is it perfect? No. Well, does yours have to be perfect? No. It's just to start getting a familiarity with this. One of the things that if I could get people to start thinking about computer programming as a career, I think I've accomplished my goal here. Sure, biology is important. Sure, there's a lot of careers in biology. I think right now, with everything that's going on, it's pretty obvious that biology is a very important topic, but computer science is just as much. And there is an incredible job shortage of computer programmers, computer animators. I mean, I'm animating this in a couple of minutes time. I'm coming up with a computer animation. Is it the best computer animation? No, it's 2D instead of 3D. But this is a way to get started understanding these concepts. Now I want my ant to start moving, and I'm using the glide code to get the ant to start moving to random positions. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get my ant to curl its abdomen and try to sting. This is what happened to me many, many times when I was in my research in Mexico and Costa Rica. I got stung by a whole lot of ants. Now if I wanted to make this look more authentic, I put a little bit of a time in between each of these costume changes so that it's a little bit more realistic looking, that the ant's actually curling its abdomen around. I have 7 costumes. If you only have 3, the 2 for the walking and the 1 for the sting, that's acceptable. Just try to think your way through this. What I love about computer programming is it teaches you how to think about stuff. So now the ant is moving. You can see its abdomen curling. It's a nice little animation, 0.1 seconds between each of those curls. Now I have a nice sting. That would be my starting code for the ant. And then I go over to Bagheera kiplingi. That's the spider. The spider doesn't have a common name, neither does the ant, besides acacia ant. Scientists have studied these creatures. Not a lot of people do. This tree with the big thorns on it, because it has these stinging ants, the one that I showed you in the last video, people tend to stay away from it. So these spiders and these ants don't really have common names. They just know that these plants are not something you want to mess around with. I'm going to get my spider to start moving now. If you notice, I'm putting controls there from events. When the up arrow is pressed, I turn I have my spider point in the direction 0, which is up, and then it moves 10 steps. I'm going to do the same thing for down. It's going to point, instead of 0, 180, because we're talking about a circle here, and it's going to move 10 steps. It'll go to the right. Everything looks good there. Now I'll have to get it to go to the right. Now I could switch this around in any way. Just because I put it up, I could set it so that when I push the up arrow, it goes down. Just what I have for the code for the 180 degrees, I would have, instead of it pointing in the direction, if pointing a 0, it would point 180. I could do that for the up arrow, I could do that for the down arrow. I'm just doing it in a way that actually makes sense, although you could completely have it all the way backwards. You could have it going left when you point down. You could have it going right when you point up. You could have it going down when you point left. I mean, there's any way you can do this. I'm just showing it in a fairly logical way. That one to go left, you'd want 270 degrees. We're talking about a 360-degree circle here. Now, some people don't like that the spider flips around when it changes from left to right. They would prefer that the spider stay right side up and not flip upside down. So what I can do is when the green arrow is clicked, it's only going to allow... Wait, no, that's not the right one. I think I have to go left, right. Let me just double check. Now, there's no interaction between the ant and the spider right now. No, now it's not moving at all. Oh, there, now it's flipping around. I think it's left, right. Let me try that. There we go, left, right, and goes to the right, goes there. That's what I want. That just looks a little bit better, I guess. It's only going to move to the left and the right. It's up to you how you want to do that. I also need to make these two smaller. So let me make the spider smaller by changing the number of pixels that it occupies on the screen. I need to do that for the ant as well. Maybe I'll do 15. There we go. That's a pretty realistic comparison between the size of the spider and the size of the ant. The ant might actually be a little bit smaller, but just for ease, now I can move. The ant's moving randomly and the spider is moving on my command. You're going to take the job of Bagheera and you're going to interact with the spider in that way. I will put a link if you do want to know more about this ecosystem. I mean, it's a children's book, but it does give you lots of information about the rainforest in Costa Rica. I wrote the book. That's why I wanted to share this with you and do some programming, because this is such a valuable skill nowadays. If you know how to make a computer do what you want it to do, which we're setting up here, and yes, we're setting up something simple, but if you can take interest in that skill, you are going to be guaranteed a job, and a job that pays very, very well. I just can't stress that enough. So what I'm doing now, I'm setting up that when the spider touches the ant, it's going to broadcast a message. Now, this is one way I can do it. There's another way I can do this as well. Again, there's no one right way to program. You can follow what I'm saying, but you don't have to exactly do every last step that I do. Some of you may have more familiarity with Scratch, and you might be able to run circles around me. I'm not sure. This is kind of a first step into understanding how much you know and how much you can do. Because when we do our final projects, and I think our final project will be something related to ecology, ecosystems, habitats, habitat restoration, I would like to make sure that we... Oh, and this is where I'm going to have the spider die if it gets stung. I'm getting carried away from myself. I'm just doing my work and not thinking about... I actually need to explain this. So what you need to do here is make the spider dead. One costume, the spider's alive. One costume, the spider's dead. When it gets stung by the ant, which is something else we're going to set up, then the spider will be dead. But if, like I was saying, if you can set up a program, and Scratch is a first step, starting to learn some things like forever loops and if-then statements and if-else statements, and learn to play around. I'm not just going to tell you what to do. You should be able to learn to play around with us a little bit. Now, I'm actually not even sure if this is the best way to fix this. So what I want to do is it's going to broadcast a message and be dead when it's touching the color of the stinger. I have to stop the ant from moving. This is where I want to go. I don't think I'll get the best color in that particular case, but I'll try. So what's going to happen, what I'm setting this up for, is that if the spider touches the stinger, it's going to broadcast a message that will cause it to end the game and will cause it to play dead or be dead. It'll switch to the costume where it has the X's over its eyes. Okay. Game over is the message I want to call this one. And again, just getting some familiarity. If nothing else, if you can learn a little bit of Scratch, and then you go to University of California, Berkeley, which is one of the best computer science colleges in the country, and you start Scratch again, then I think I've accomplished something with you. Now, my original spider was called Screenshot. That's just because that was the file that I uploaded. I could change that costume from Screenshot, but it's not really necessary. And if you notice, the spider has to get stung by the ant and die. So let me look at the ant's code for a moment. That might not be the right way. A lot of this is trying. You have to try. You can't break Scratch. You just have to think, what do I want my program to do? I was of the impression that people in the middle school do have a little bit of coding experience. Hopefully they teach you something about that. Now, if you don't, then this is the chance to get these things learned. So now my spider's going to move around. This might be the best way of managing. Let me think my way through this. Now, I will share this with you so you can take a look. I would urge you not to just copy what I do. You can see the code. Part of this, I'm just going through, I'm starting to think, what do I want to do? In this case, now when I touch Bagheera, which is my other sprite, this might be the best way to do it. Let me try. When I touch Bagheera, and then I actually can get rid of that. Part of this is simplifying the code. I just realized there's another way I can do this. Now, that's not the color of the stinger that I actually want. But let me see. If I touch the ant... Ooh, there we go. I have the ant stinging. Now, I don't have a response from the spider, but I do have the ant stinging. That's a good first step. That means I did something that works. If you did that, you did something that works. Great job. This is incredibly frustrating to not learn how to computer program, but it is incredibly important. There's a reason why those jobs pay so much, because not a lot of people are doing those jobs. And the reason why not a lot of people are doing those jobs is because it's hard. But you can do it. It's not impossible. Now, what I want to do is focus on the color of the stinger. So when the spider touches that color, the spider will... almost there. Oh, nope. Okay. When the spider touches this color, it's going to die. I have that. I just have to make sure I get the exact right color. Boom. So that now when the spider gets stung, it will die. Let me try. Just everything looks good. The ant will walk. That's my spider, though. And once it touches that color, it's going to switch the costume to the dead one. And everything should also stop. If it says, I don't need that, I can broadcast game over for some other stuff later. And ooh, okay, there we go. You see that the spider just died. And let's see. And can I get the spider to touch and sting? Ooh, and it's dead. Okay. That's where I want to get to today. If we get that far, I am very happy. Hope everyone has some fun. Don't get too frustrated. That's what computer programming is. It's very frustrating, but once you get it, you're golden.